rusty wheels and knew I'd take her home. I brought her to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years and let her sew again.
Good morning, everybody. I am going to get started putting this machine back together. Bob has finished the motor and it is in transit on its way to me. So I'm going to get everything done that I can. And as soon as the motor gets here, and then I'll put together the light fixture and that. But there's no reason I can't get started now. This paint has had plenty of time to cure. And I like that. I like giving it at least a week or so to cure between the time I paint it and I start handling it. Because even though it can feel dry, it can still get damaged. I have learned from experience, learn from my mistakes. So let me get my parts over here and we'll get started. Okay, so I got my parts. And while I was getting them, I noticed a bunch of yellow jackets flying around. And this has been a bad year for them. So I'm afraid they might be trying to create a nest in my shop, so I'm not too sure how long I'm going to be in here before I have to evacuate. So anyway, I think that I am going to actually get started in the nose. Why not? Why not? That's exotic. So let me go ahead and get my needle bar, presser bar, and all of the little parts together. Actually, before I get started on that, I'm going to go ahead and put her medallion back on. Got her polished up nice and shiny. And for some reason that's not lining up with the holes, which is odd because that is where I took her off. I don't know what that situation is. There it goes. Okay, so I have her cleaned and polished. These are what I'm using. They are brass discussion pins. They are solid brass and with a little so this isn't the one, but it's a little flower-shaped tip. We pounded a little flower shape into the end, so they're similar, not exact, but kind of similar. And as you can see on this machine, they are a bit too small to hold it securely. So what I'll do is put just a little dab of clear epoxy in those holes back there, put it in, secure it down until that epoxy cures. Once I have it in there, I have a piece of painting masking tape and I have it folded so the sticky side is not touching the machine, but then I can overlap it and just kind of strap this on. And I'm just going to let that sit there. By the time I'm ready to pull it off, the epoxy should be very, very dry and the medallion will be on for good. I wanted to point something out. When I was taking this machine apart, it was locked up. And it turned out that the problem, after I took everything apart, is there is a gear in here where the gears mesh, and that part was rusted together. So as you can see, it is spinning very nicely now. I got that taken care of, but these can be troublesome. I had another machine I was working on where this little seam right here, between this bushing and the main shaft area, was rusted and gooed up, There's a lot of little places where trouble can be lurking on these machines, but once they're freed up, they're fabulous. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is get the lifter lever put back on. Just a simple screw right here. And once it is tightened in all the way, you should be able to move that really freely. And next I would probably put this presser tension release on, but I need to be able to get to this little hole here, so I'm going to skip ahead and get my upper thread tension mechanism put back together. I'm going to start by getting this little piece put on. Place it over here and just getting this up. I'm going to place it about midway I need to do the final adjustment once I'm actually getting everything timed up, but I'm just going to put that in like that. Tipped her down on her back. I think that that's going to be a much better position while I'm working on this. I got a new pad down here. These are those floor tile, interlocking floor tile pieces. Got a pack of them at Aldi. And I'm figuring as I use them up, because you know, things puncture and things like that, I could just switch it out. So that's my plan. And it's a nice cushioned surface so that nothing's gonna get damaged on there. Okay, now let me polish this up real quick. Okay, so this little pin goes inside of here. There is a flat side, a round side. Flat side goes out, but before I put that in, I'm gonna get this set in, and aren't you going easily? I'm gonna be putting it in so that this little slot is going horizontal. I have a little set screw here, and there's a hole in the back. I'm gonna make sure I don't lose anything here. There's a hole back here. It's going to go through the back side. That's going to lock this in from back there. And I'm going to go ahead and put this little set screw in that way. I actually had to loosen this screw up just a bit to move this little piece out of the way first. And to get this set in, making sure that it's horizontal. Pushed in all the way. I think we're good. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, this back, and tighten it up just a hair. This little pin, the flat part, is going out. I'm just going to slide that in. It should go down that little hole in the center. Okay. And now I'm going to create a stack with my two little wheels. I'm going to polish those up again real quick, and this piece here. To show you, when I say I'm going to polish, I just have my little polisher over here going, and I just run it on the edge there, and it gives it a quick little final shine. All right, so I have a spring here. Okay, I'm placing my spring so that it's going down. I have my stack. Okay, and I'm going to place that, putting that little top foot or toe into the hole. Actually, I need to lock these together before I do that. Okay, so here's my spring around my stack there. Setting the whole thing in, that little toe in its hole, spring is down. Okay, and I wanted to tell you, I've been working on the motor and light with Bob and everything, and he is much more technically gifted in the ins and outs of the mechanics of this. So you can watch me, but if you are curious, he has this playlist, and I'm going to try to link to it, with extensive videos on all kinds of 201 issues. Okay, so if you want to know any specific thing, you can look on his playlist. So highly recommended. And I'm going to try to, I don't know if I can link his playlist in my playlist, but we'll see. I'll do something like that. So here's my life. I got that done. And I was looking in my parts, and I'm like, oh no, I cannot find my little nut and my little indicator dial. And I had completely forgotten that this machine was missing those parts. And thankfully, Bob had extras and he sent to me, and I had completely forgotten that. So I was looking all over my table trying to figure out where those parts had gone to. They were in a separate bag. So I need to clean these up. Putting gloves on sweaty hands is no fun, just letting you know. Let me get these cleaned up, and I will be back and finish installing them on my machine. Okay, so let me see if I can get this centered. This piece here has a little plus or minus on the top. I'm just going to kind of set that on the top. Set my little beehive spring in like that. My little washer with the little prongy side pointing up and out. And oh, it's on there. So here is my little number dial. Has little numbers in there. I need to push all of this down and get this set on. Putting it right about on 3 now. So I'm got this on here and I'm pushing it down and threading on a little nut. The nut has a little spoke sticking out of it, and I don't want that to engage until I have it threaded down far enough. I got it on. It was wanting to cross thread or something, so anyhow, that was a pain. And I completely forgot to bring this spring up over this lip before I did that. I don't think I can manhandle it over it now. Can I? No, I shouldn't, because then it'll bend. All right, so I need to unscrew this and bring that. This spring has to sit above this little ledge right there. If you're curious, we did find the yellow jacket nest while we were looking for a yellow jacket nest. Found a small gas leak. Got that all taken care of, so I am hopefully out of danger again. Okay, so that looks good. Starting the spring down gives it tension that way so that it'll want to rest up against this little ledge here. So let me go ahead and get this put back on now. Okay, feeling better about that. Got my spring. This nut is pretty much level with the top of that inside post area. And I think that that is going to be good. So I'm just going to leave this here for a minute. Why aren't you turning the opposite way? Oh my gosh. We are not good. Hang on a second. Okay, I think we're finally good. And I am just going to leave it set around 4-ish and call it good. So, setting her upright again. We're going to finish working on her nose. Okay, so I'm setting this little piece up here. This Y-shaped piece. There's a little screw that goes here. This part, the bent metal part right here, should be tapping up against the back of this pin that is sticking out. Okay, and then the little spring goes up against the casting. So let me get this screwed in. Okay, so that is in. So when I lift this up, if you can see, it's pushing against here, and then this should push out. And it does. Okay, so everything is working great there. Let me go ahead and tip it up and start working in her guts. All right, so first let me get this little piece set in. Now there's a hole over here that a set screw is going to go in. This flat part is going to go so it's up against that hole. Set it in there. This part down here is what the needle bar clamp is going to go into. So let's just take this one step at a time. Okay, make sure everything is good here and set it in there like that. Then I'm going to get the little set screw that goes in the side, and I have to access it from this hole over here. So I am starting my little set screw over there just so that I don't need to try to get that set in later. But if you can see, it's coming right in the side of this casting over here. This is going to be going in there at one point, and see this flat side? That flat side needs to go against that set screw I just started in there, okay? But before that can go, this piece is going to need to be underneath it. So I am going to set it in like this, okay? With my thread take-up arm over here. This big piece, I'm going to put just a touch of oil on it. It also has a place where a set screw is going to go into it, as you can see right here. And there is another hole over here from this outside that's going to attach that. So I need to make sure that this flat part right here is towards this side. Just set it in there first and then push down. Okay, so while that is in place, I'm going to get my smaller set screw on my screw starter and come in from this side. And then finish it off. Actually, I need this one. Okay, did you see where it just moved? That was it setting itself next to that little flat spot. So that should be in there good. All right, so bending this back upright over that hole. Remember, I have my set screw right there. And I'm going to place this piece with that flat part up against the set screw that I am looking at. And come back in from the side through this hole and get that turned. And I think I need to rotate this, but there, see how that turned again? That was setting in that little flat side. So that is good. Make sure it will still turn. Oops, this needs to stay pointed down. Will it still turn? Yes, it does. So that is good. Okay. This little piece here is going to slide over that bushing. That's for setting timing. Okay, so I got that on, and I'm going to go ahead and slide my, hang on just one sec. I actually decided I think I'm going to put my presser bar in because there's a little block that goes in here, and I think it'll be easier to get that set in without the needle bar over here blocking my way. So give me a second to get all of my presser bar stuff out of its bag and set up over here. Okay. This is the little block that I was talking about. That is going to slide into this slot over here. Okay. And that is a lot easier without fighting the needle bar, I can tell you that. I want to make sure that it's going to slide. I do have paint in there, and I think that it's a little too hard to move up and down. It'll move, but it's a little bit sticky because of the clear coat that I use is a little thick. So I'm going to get my X-Acto knife and clean the paint out of here really quick, and I'll be back. It's not really a big deal. I just kind of set my X-Acto knife in there and swipe it back this way. And that is all there is to it. It doesn't take a huge amount of time, and it's not really dangerous. So if I set this in now, yeah, that moves a lot better. I am going to put some oil in there though, and on here, just to make sure that everything's nice and happy. And actually I'm going to polish that one more time. Okay, so here is my presser bar. I have a little smudge I need to polish off and on. Sometimes the polisher, that rubbing compound of the polisher, leaves a little bit of a little stuff on there. So, okay, so this is coming down. First, I'm going to put my washer on. And this probably would fit down from the top. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So, you never know. I'm going to set my spring in here. And then it goes through this block we just put in. And I'm going to put some oil down here so that hopefully it'll slide through there really well. Come on. Okay, so now it's going all the way through here. I'm going to... it popped the washer off. Hang on, I think I dropped my washer. Let me go grab that. Life, you know. So there's my washer on there. I'm going to screw this little finial on the top. Actually, I'm going to re-polish that finial. It's black on the top. It's a blackened one. But nothing else on this machine is blackened, so I'm going to go ahead and polish that off. Usually the blackening will polish off, you know. I just polish the top. The threads can stay black. That is fine. The blackening kind of helps them from getting rusty. So if you can see, I put a little bit of sewing machine oil on that as I'm going to thread it down, and I think that is good enough. Just for right now, This flat part is on the outside, okay? And its final resting place is probably going to be right about here, right about. So I'm going to go ahead and put that set screw in just for now, but I will make that final adjustment a little bit later. Okay, so now with that in, the block's moving up and down, so everything's in alignment. Again, I'll be making its final position adjustment later. I actually think I need to definitely push it up. It looks like this is way too low. So just for now, I'm going to actually move it up higher than it needs to be, just so it's out of my way when I'm working on stuff down below there. So that's way too high now. That's okay. That's okay. It's not a big deal to lower it, but I need to have space to get in here and do all that. So let me get that needle bar in now. Okay, it's actually been a little while because this screw, I've lost it. I've looked everywhere and I've taken apart several machines since I did this one and I can't find it, but I have a replacement on the way. So I'm just going to I just slid my needle bar in there so that it wouldn't want to go anywhere. I'll do something to hold that in place while I'm working on it, but I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and get started working on the bottom. Okay, so down here underneath, I'm going to cover up these gears. I'm going to put a lot of nice clean sewing machine oil on it. And I feel like I need to mention one of my first videos that had to do with a 201. When I was taking it apart, you know, it was my first video dealing with 201s. And when I was doing, not the put together video, but the take apart video, I mentioned, oh, I can't even remember my wording. It was, I need to grease these, or I'll need to oil these, or grease or oil, and I'm not sure, okay? But I get so much grief about that. By the time I put it together, I understood, no, you don't put grease on them, you only put oil on them. But to this day, I get people giving me grief that I am spreading misinformation. So anyway, if you're doing this, don't put grease on these, put oil on them. So I feel like I have covered myself there. Let me go ahead and get this screwed on down here. So now on the front part, there's this little U-shaped piece. It's going to go on here first. My little screws for my 𝐥𝐢𝐤 plate, you know. It's how I can remember what is what, especially when I have like two miscellaneous screws or just one miscellaneous screw that can easily get confused. I like to stick my little labels on. So get it started on my screw starter. I've taken off my gloves because it's so hot in here that my hands get so sweaty inside of those gloves. Okay, so just get this screw started over here. And get the other one. And move it and get it started over here. That's good. And get that cinched down, and then there's going to be a cover that's going to go over here, right there. Okay, so I've got that on. I'm just turning it to make sure everything is still spinning freely. And it is, so that's all good. The needle clamps on these guys are a little bit trickier because of this little piece. So inside, I actually need to back this screw out just a bit until it's out of the way. Okay, so that's what it looks like. I'm just going to get it started. All right. Inside of here, there's a divot. Don't know if it'll focus so you can see there's a divot in right there. And that is what this little chunk is going to fit into. Okay? So it's going to fit into it like that. Yeah, let me see if I can do this on the camera. Okay, so to put this little clamp back on the bottom, it has this little thread guide that sits in a hole back here. Okay? I just have it sitting there, and I just loosened it out of the way, so I'm going to pop it back in. Okay? So it's just kind of sitting in there. And see that little hole right there? I need to line up that hole with this opening. So I'm sliding this up on there, so now I can see that little opening there. And on this teeny tiny little flat screw, there's a little nipple at the end. That nipple goes into that opening. Okay, so now that's on, and now I can put the little handle back on here and tighten it up. And I am doing this because every time I turn that balance wheel, if I don't have something down here to keep this needle bar from flying off while I'm waiting for my little screw, it's just going to come loose, and we don't want that, so that's good. While I am doing that, just so that I don't lose anything, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over this way, and there is a tiny little hole right there. Okay, that is what this thread guide is going to get screwed onto with this tiny little screw. So let me see if I can set something on there, move you so you can see what I'm doing. Get my itty bitty set screw on the screw starter. Okay, and let's see if I can get that oriented on there. Right, that's not right. That is right. Okay. Okay, so I'm going on a little side quest over here. I have an old 66 needle bar that is nasty, but I think that just for temporarily, I can use the, oh, I need to plug this back in. I can use the needle clamp from that until I get, this old 66 needle clamp does not have the little timing marks on it. And, excuse me, while I've been through here. Okay, I want timing marks, so I have purple power and water mixed in there, and I'm just going to set that so that I can use that clamp in here so that it's not going to fall out, because right now every time I do something it just wants to fall out, and that's annoying. So I want you to see I'm using this needle bar clamp right now. It's from a 66. It's going to be okay for right now, but I will be switching it out for the original that has the timing marks on it when I get my new little replacement screw in. But for right now, that's going to work good. So let me go ahead and put these other 66 pieces back in my parts bin, and I will finish the I think I'm going to work right here next to get my bobbin race and all of that put together. Okay, welcome back. It's been a little while, and I need to get this little machine put together. So coming back to the needle bar, I'm slipping this needle clamp with its little lines on it in. The screw's already started in the back. I've just pulled it out enough or untwisted it enough that it's not interfering with anything there. Slide it into place and push this needle bar up. Down here, this little part needs to be towards the inside of the machine. And for right now, I'm going to set this all the way down so that there's only maybe about 1 millimeter of the needle bar exposed from the top. I think that that's probably a pretty good place to start. I need to lower this, move this down so I can reach this little screw from this hole in the back. And I can do that now, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten that little screw up. Okay, so I'm just going to put this little race back in. It just kind of pops down. There's a little nub that little keyhole fits over. Okay, and this big flat top screw is going to go on there. And this might be kind of a pain to get into with everything down here, so I'm just going to get started by hand. And then come back and cinch that in. Okay, now technically I should be holding on to the wheel over here to keep it from turning. I don't have my wheel on, I just have a nub. But I kind of wanted to do this before I put the motor and wheel and everything on because they make it so much heavier. So there you go. I think that's going to hold really well. Come back, wipe off my mess. Okay. Now this is the bobbin case, and this is the little bracket to hold it in, and then this is the bobbin case bracket up here that's going to hold this in the right orientation. So what I'm going to tell you is go and watch Bob Fowler's 201 playlist, because he's going to go into intense detail on exactly how to turn and open these little clampy spring-loaded latches there and everything like that. Much more detailed on all of the mechanics there, okay? I'm going to put a little bit of oil into that track. Where is my oil? Here it is. Just so that I can know everything's going to move very smoothly. Okay. And off camera, I did clean this up. Take it up. There's a little spring on the side you take off to make sure that there's nothing gooey stuck in there. All right, I think we're good there. So, where's my little ring? Here it is. I need to get this ring locked into place, but I believe before I do that, I need to get this on so that it can hold the case in place, okay, because I need this to be somewhat stationary. So let me get this screwed on like that. It's holding this little thumb together. I got a couple little screws to hold that, and I'll be right back. Let me tell you of a tale of woe. And I'm not too sure how much I'm leaving in and how much I'm editing out just because of time. But, all right, so here's my needle bar. You see this little needle bar clamp? How lovely it is with the nice lines on there. That's not the original needle bar clamp. This is the original needle bar clamp, okay? But at one point, while I was washing all of my parts, I use my little ultrasonic cleaner, and sometimes the liquid in it gets really, really dirty, and I fish things out with a magnet. But when I was doing that, I left the little screw that is now here in the cleaner. So then when I did the next batch of parts, which was this part, this whole mechanism, when I fished that out, this little screw came out with that. But I didn't realize that until just a couple minutes ago, okay? And see how this is a slightly different design? It doesn't really matter that much because this will work just fine. But if you were paying close attention, the original needle bar clamp looked like this, not that. And they're very similar to a 66. Actually, the 66 needle bar clamp works in there. But I just found this screw in there. So I'd gone through several iterations. First, it was putting the needle bar on with this and realizing I don't have a screw. Pulling that out, putting a temporary clamp on that didn't have lines from a junk, parts machine that I had. Well, Bob sent me this, put that on. 10 minutes later, I'm putting this together and I find that screw. At this point, I think that's on there now. I'm going to leave it. I'll save this and everything, but it is a slightly different design. So instead of having the screw come in the back to cinch the clamp together, it's right here on the front. But getting a tiny screw misplaced somewhere, and this is not an interchangeable screw, it's tapered. Let me show you. And so that can just throw you over the edge. See how the head of that is kind of tapered and everything. So anyway, like I said, I'm not sure how much I'm leaving in of all of the switching out needle clamps over and over and over, but if you get to this point and you see that that's not what I started out with when I took the machine apart, that is the reason why. Anyhow, I'm going to kind of skip feed dogs, presser foot, and all that for right now. I need to get all of this stuff on the bottom of this machine put in before I can get any of that, slightly timed up. So all of these little pieces, I'm just going to put aside and I'll deal with that later. All right, so right now I'm just getting this big piece, and just setting it into place, okay? these big crevices, indentations in the casting. That is the cue that this piece with this little hinged part fits there. Okay, I'm not putting the pivot points in quite yet because I want to get the part that this slides over in place first. All right, so this piece here, I just wanted to point out this little screw. This is for dropping the feed dogs. So it's going to be like when you have your machine right here in front. So you untwist this until it's out enough that it'll pop out a bit, and then this lever is free to move up and down. Okay, so you can see there's a couple different position options. One is feed dogs up, one is feed dogs down. So that's what this is. I'm going to go ahead and screw that back in and drop a little bit of oil. Oh, come on, get lined up there. Drop just a little bit of oil in here where the pivot points are going to be going and get it set into place. So our areas are nice and clean. Okay, now you see there's a bearing right here. If I line this up, I'm going to put that bearing inside of that fork, okay? And this lines up with the hole up here in the casting. Well, trust me, it does. And the same over here, the tip of this is going to line up with this hole in the casting. So I am just going to go ahead and get these started to kind of hold it in place. Of course, final adjustments will always be forthcoming, but for right now, I just want to hold it. Okay, so that is roughly in place. Of course, yes, I will be making adjustments later. I'm just holding it in place right now, okay? This part is going to be connected to a vertical shaft that is not yet in place, so I need to do that. But before I get that done, I'm just going to go ahead and get this just kind of set in place. It has its own little pair of pivot points here. Okay, so I'm just going to twist them in from the outside and put the little nuts on just to hold it slightly into place while I work on everything else. Okay, so I've got this one just in place. It's not connected over here. I am going to go ahead and raise this part up here. This is the shaft that I did not remove. It is the one that is closest to the gears up there on top. Okay, this is screw. And if you can see, it's shaped like that. I'm coming in from this outside. And why aren't you going in? Hang on a second. Okay. And I just wanted to point out, this is one of these screws that defies certain laws, okay? This is a righty-tighty screw, even though it looks like that on the top. Just letting you know. A general guideline is if it doesn't go all the way across that little slot, that it's a lefty-tighty, but not this one. And it is the dickens to get in here because my screw starter doesn't want to hold it. So there we go. Okay. I'm going to turn it in, and there is a nut that I'm going to place over here. And this is another adjustment point that we can deal with later, but for right now, I'm just getting it put on. So once again, turning the wheel to make sure everything is moving as it should, and it kind of is. Will be adjusted. Don't worry about that. Okay, let me get the stitch length adjusting fork deal out here. Okay, lots of parts here. So remember, this was just totally locked in place. So that rectangular bearing is moving very freely now. This is the handle that's going to be adjusting the stitch length. So as this turns up and down, this is going to rotate up and down. And that is going to be over this little rectangular bearing, which is going to influence the angle of this piece. which is going to change your stitch length. So I'm showing you that because getting all of this placed inside of the machine in there can be a little bit of a pain. It's basically, well, it's going to be coming out through here and over on the side. Hang on a sec. On the back side, there's this hole here, and this screw with this washer, with the little tabs going down, is going to go through that. This is what is going to screw into this piece to hold it in place, okay? So trust me, it's going to take me just a second to get all of that situated, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I got it connected, and actually it wasn't as difficult as on some other machines because you have openings on both sides. And because this lever is connected to a slidey that goes over a rectangular piece, that was a lot easier. So at this point, I'm just making sure everything's moving freely here, get that cinched in. I think I'm going to oil that a little more in there, but what I wanted to show you is that when I'm moving this lever up and down, that is moving this up and down. Now this screw, I slipped in there, it's connecting to this shaft down here. This is the big one with that hinged area. There's a nut down here. This is an adjustment point, okay? So when I'm setting up where my feed dogs are sitting in the opening in the plate, this is one of the adjustment points I'm going to be using. Okay, but for right now, that looks pretty good. So let me flip her over this way and set this little piece on. Just gonna move that down about halfway. This machine did not have a washer. There's supposed to be a little washer in here. Let me go see if I can find one. Okay, so what I have done is put a little bit of oil. Oops, you can't see that. I've put a little bit of oil around the rim here. Have a little just regular washer in there. I think it'll be okay. And setting this into place, before I put the topper on, I am just moving it around to make sure that that paint, isn't binding it up anywhere. I want this to be able to turn very freely. If you ever paint a machine and it's not turning freely, well, you might need to get an X-Acto knife in there and clean it out like so, just sticking it up on the edge and running the knife around. That's just going to take out a little bit of excess, maybe clear coat or something. So, right there. Okay, let me get a Q-tip and clean that little crevice out. Wipe it off with my microfiber rag. And this should fit a lot better now. So, let me see here. Oh yeah, that's very free. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and take this little nut or screw or whatever back out, put the pretty plate on, set it back down, and then screw this in. But I'm going to give this one more polish before I do. Hello everybody, welcome back. It's probably been a week or so since I have worked on this machine. I've had a lot of other things going on and I just need to get it finished up here. So this little miscellaneous part down here, there is a little washer on the back, and it would be easier if I lined this up while I was looking from a different direction, but that's okay. This is a thread guide so that when you're using the bobbin winder, it will move out or in to center on that bobbin winder. For some reason, I'm just having issues. Alrighty, so I got that screwed on there with its little washer. When it comes time to get this centered, of course you'll have to loosen up the washer a little bit so you can slide that back and forth, but that is okay. So before I get the feed dogs and everything put in, I'm going to go ahead and put a new needle in here and try to make sure that I get the hook timed up properly. Okay, so just to give you a little update, what I was going to do is try to get my needle timed up. So I put a needle in there and I was going to pop my thread on, and I have, remember this one did not have a little thread plate, protector plate kind of thing. It just was missing, and it had a very bent spool pin. So I pounded out the spool pin and I got it pretty much straight. I'm pretty happy with that, but I went to pop the little thread guard in, and usually the spool pin goes in the center. There's no hole it can go in the center. And I can kind of try to tap it in over here or over here, but usually it goes right there, and I haven't decided what I'm going to do about that yet. I have decided not to decide at this moment, so just take that little plate back off. But just to see if it's going to work, I went ahead and put a little, you can tell it's a class 15 bobbin down here, just to put it there so I can route some thread through, just to see if it's going to work. And I did just put a regular, you know, class 66. These use a 66 size bobbin down there, and it does pick up the thread. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that I actually have the needle bar position on there correct. So when I just put that little plate on there, turn this down, it's gonna, well, it did before. Hang on a second. Put this down, there it goes. It's going to grab that thread, bring it around, and I can pull it up. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and put my feed dogs on down here and get that taken care of. The tension on this was also giving me fits, so I ended up loosening it up quite a bit, so I need to play with that and figure out why. This machine was a total disaster when I found it, so you know, who knows what's going on. But she's going to be able to sew. She's going to be fine. But before all that, I'm going to go ahead and pull this bobbin out so I don't lose it, and get her feed dogs put back on so they get screwed on right here. Okay, those two little holes there match up over here. Got a couple screws that go on there. Let me get that put on. So I was going to put my plate on, and my holes on my plate were not lining up with the holes on my machine. And that is because my feed dogs were not in the correct position. They were over that way too much. Okay, so what I have done is, actually I'm going to put a little screw on here just to hold this plate on, because I'm going to be flipping this machine up in just a second, and I don't want to lose that again. And I am just using the top of, actually that's the wrong size, something like this might work better. Just one of my little Chapman screwdriver bits, because getting a big screwdriver under that space can be a pain. Okay, so with this plate in place now, I want to turn the wheel just to make sure that when they come all the way up, first of all making sure they can come all the way up, and they're not right now because I have everything loosened underneath. But with my hand I'm just pushing them up, and when I push it up I can see that they're centered in there. So I'm going to flip this down like so. Alright, so right now I've got these pivot points very loose, as you can see. Okay, so with those feed dogs in the correct position, I'm going to go ahead and get these snugged in a little bit more. I don't want it to bind on this. I want to have good movement, but they don't need to be this sloppy. I can tell you that. So let me get it just holding the bar where it needs to be, you know, looking at this side over here, seeing where those feed dogs need to be, holding this bar in the right position, and then with this hand tightening up the pivot points on either side so that it'll hold that position is my plan. And once again, to tighten it, you're going to hold the screw part in place, and then with a 9/16 inch wrench do the tightening to tighten the nuts in place. Okay, so just once again turning everything and checking it's all good. And this is, if you're going to drop your feed dogs, loosen that up, pull that down, your feed dogs are dropped, you know, put that back up, and screw it in, and your feed dogs are in the normal position. I'm going to go ahead and put the balance wheel back together. So we've got these two little pieces here. Okay, I'm going to put them in so that the little nub sticking up is closer towards the center of the wheel. You're just going to slide in there like that. Okay, and turn it this way. Now I have this spring, which is like the shock absorber. I'm going to place this end of that spring over the nub that's in place. These are the two we set in, that center one that's always there. I'm putting one end over that. And if I pull this over, see that little give? That's the shock absorber, okay? I need to put some grease in here, so these are refillable, thankfully, so I can just keep putting new grease in. And I'm putting some so that where this spring is butting up against these little nubby pieces, everything's going to be happy, okay? Just a little bit, just for funsies. Okay. So that's what it's looking like right now. I think that's going to work. Actually, I'm going to put just a hair more right here. Okay. Now, this piece, okay, so there's a solid or a circle and then the slanty part. And I was just looking because this is a little bit, it's fine. It looked like it was bent, but I don't think it is. I'm going to place that center peg that stays stationary where this part is, and I had to really pry this out with a little razor blade when I was taking it off, so I'm just tapping it back in there. Okay, this is the 𝐾𝐨𝐧'𝐿 gear. This post in the gear is going to go in this side of the spring, so I'm going to put it in there, and if you have it in and you can move it and it feels like it's under tension, it's in that little spring, then you're good. Okay, now on here, if I look, I can see a little circle right there and a little circle right here and a little circle right there. I'm going to try to line those up with these holes. Alright, so putting this over the top. This one just snapped on. I've had some of these wheels that did not want to behave, so this is me backing those screws out because I tightened them up and this is bound up, and I completely forgot that you have to leave a specific size gap in there so that it won't move. So let me get my little what is it, thickness gauges, and I need to look back and remember which gauge I need to space that. Let me go do that real quick. By the way, I just pulled up my old video of when I was taking this machine apart because I was curious how in the world this thread spool was in. And they had it, well, you don't need to watch me watch my own video, but it was basically pushed into this very back hole here, which I can do. I can tap that in, but let me show you. If I put this in like this, it's not even going to be in one of those holes. So I'm confused and concerned and all of the above, but it does fit snugly in that hole. So we're going to continue on. I will figure that out later, but I need to once again look for which size gap I need to put in my balance wheel. Okay, so it was 3/1000 was the difference, the gap that I needed, and that feels snug. So let me get these looser and lift this ring up just a bit here. And make sure I can slide that in underneath. That side looks good. That looks good. And this side is tight. Well, let me lift this side up and then I will screw it back together again. Okay, we're all good now, so I'm going to set this piece aside, and the next thing I'm going to do is get the light wired up and put back in. Alright, so this is my little shield. Okay, here's the wiring as it came from Bob, all color coordinated and lovely. I've put the new light bulb in it now. I find that it's easier to put the light bulb in the little socket before you have to wedge your fingers in there, okay? And then this part is now going to, there's a little screw here, you need to make sure that's backed out. Oops, I almost forgot to put the little padding washer thing back here. Okay, that goes in first. So that's back there, like that. All right, well, let me get this wedged in to this little crevice right there. Okay, so there are two screws that go with the light. The smaller one, oh, this is going to be trouble. This is going to be trouble. See, the smaller one goes back here, all right? This bigger one is going to go in this hole here, okay? And then that gets screwed onto the machine right there. So the question is, can I do that and get the screwdriver in there? I did before, so we will see. Hang on a sec. Hang on. Okay, so I've got it in there. I've got it tightened. I think we are in good shape. I've got these lamp wires. I can see them down here. I'm going to need to get things oriented a little bit better. Let me see if I turn it this way. Do you see this little spout-shaped area right here? I need to get these wires on the correct side of these vertical shafts. And hang on. I need to move something here and get it fed through that little spout kind of area right there. I know you can't see it. Just take my word for it right now. Okay, so maybe you can see that better. This is where that wires are coming down, and then they're going through that little spout and out the hole on this side right there. Okay, so we are going to be putting the potted motor on. Now before I do that, I have just refilled my grease syringe, and I'm going to be putting grease in here where this worm gear is. Bob shipped it to me without the grease on it so that it wouldn't melt in transit and just become a total mess. Let me turn that just a bit. Hang on a second. Okay, so I put some grease on, turn the worm gear, put more grease on, turn the worm gear. So I think it's pretty well coated all the way around. We're going to go ahead and get this put on. I'm going to flip my machine upright this way. I think that that's going to make my life a little bit easier. Okay, so this beautiful butterfly is the back, and that's the front. So I'm going to be setting this over here, and there's a couple screw holes there that I need to make sure are lined up. And I'm just going to go ahead and get them started with my little screw starter here. And then once I have them, started in, then I'll come back with my heavy-duty screwdriver and get them tightened up. Okay, now that that is on, I'm going to put my wheel on. I need to make sure that the gears are going to mesh up together. There it goes. So if I turn this now, well, it's not going to work because I don't have my clutch engaged. So let me get the rest of this wheel put together down here. Hopefully I'm doing this correctly. Let me put just a little bit of oil around in here and up there. Screw this in and screw that in, and let's hope that I have it oriented correctly, otherwise I'll have to take it apart and flip that washer around. Okay, so yay, I did it right the first time. I should go buy a lottery ticket. So it's engaged now, and that is with it loosened so that you can do a bobbin. That's engaged. So now if I turn it, let's see here, how can I do this so you can see down here? If I turn the wheel now, needle bar is going up and down. Remember, it would not do that before. This was completely rusted solid. So that's really good. I am pleased with that. Okay, so right here, there is this piece that's going to be bolted to the machine, this piece that is going to be where your plug goes, all right? And I always have to try it out first because I, every single time, forget if this is going down or up, and I invariably end up doing it the wrong way first. So that looks good. Let me go ahead and put that screw in right here to hold it in place. Okay, that is nice and secure. Now I'm going to put my little switch in first. So taking off the little plastic ring, and then there's a little hexagon nut here. I'm going to pull that off. Alright, first I'm just going to take off all of these little Bakelite screws, and I do have washers in there. I don't think I did in the beginning, but it looks like Bob gave me new washers, so that's nice. I'm leaving the washers in the very back. Actually, I'm going to flip them out right now because otherwise while I'm wiring this little switch on, they're going to fall out and then I'll be crawling on the floor, which is not very helpful. Alright, so first the red wire that was coming out of here, you know, it's red to red, and this is the light switch. So this is the power to the light, and I just need to put that switch in the middle of it. So I'll pop it back out. There's a little screw over here that Bob put on so I could just connect this wire by, I don't want to take it back out, but just trust me, there's a little screw that you just put the eyelet on and re-screw it when he does your motors and your lights and your wiring, because it's fabulous, okay? And then I have another red wire coming out that's soldered in place. That's going to be the one that is going to be connected to this part right here. But before anything else, I'm going to go ahead and put my little nut and ring back on out here to hold that switch in place. Okay, now I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to turn the camera off because otherwise my hands are going to totally get in the way. Up here at the red dot, freshly repainted red, first I'll put my washer back in, but then this wire from my lamp switch and this wire from my motor are going to go on, okay? Center dot, the number 2 position, is only going to be this black from my motor, and then the third dot over here is only going to be my yellow, once again from my lamp, okay? So let me get all of that put on, and then this whole piece is going to get put on just like this, and there's a screw that'll go through up here to secure it. Okay, so it's still hanging down there. I don't have it attached, but I wanted to make sure before I do that things are working. So if I hit the switch, the light does come on, so that's great. And if I push on the foot pedal, oops, why is my light flickering? I don't think I have my light bulb pushed in all the way. Okay, now if I push this pedal, that's going really well. I'm happy about that. I don't know why that was. The motor sounds great. Very smooth, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and permanently attach all of this stuff. Okay, so with the light working, the motor working, I'm just going to do some finishing touches while I still try to figure out what in the world I'm going to do up here. I don't even know. Hang on a second. Well, you know, that thing. I'll figure it out. But first I'm going to put my front plate back on, give her a final little polish. She's looking so much better than when I took her off. Put my feed dogs on and make sure I have my presser lifter lever at the right position. So what I've done is turn the wheels so that the feed dogs are down. Okay. Lower the lever, loosen up this screw so that I can position it all the way down where it needs to be. And then I push while this is down where it needs to be, I push this block and the spring up just a hair and tighten it up there. And that way I can lift the lever just a little bit. Okay. Now that's not giving me a huge amount of clearance. I can adjust it so I have more clearance down there. I might do that. All right. I have a lot of clearance now, probably about the max. You can't go any higher than what the needle clamp will allow you to. It is about, I used my little wrench here as my guide. So, you know, still just under a 1/4 inch, but I think that it's a good hefty amount to be able to get a few layers of velvet underneath there. So that's a good thing. Okay, let me go ahead and get my shiny plate back on here. Okay, so I got her just sitting in her little base, looking lovely. And I called Bob Fowler because I could not figure this out. And he said that he actually has a machine where it's just pounded into the last hole and this is left open. So there you go. So I've tapped it in. I might try to come up with something to fill in that hole. It's not hurting anything, but you know, I just might. So let me go ahead and get her threaded up, get a piece of fabric over here, and let's see if she's gonna sew. I'm just putting a bobbin in down there. This is going to thread from the top, go over that hook, around. There's a hook there it goes through, and then it's locked in underneath the spring. Through the take-up lever. There's another little loop right here. Thread guide on the outside. Thread guide on the inside. And then I'm going to thread it from the inside going out. All right, I just got it in here, got it started. And she is sewing amazingly well. I have her on a very long stitch length right now. Here we go. So, look at that. It is perfect on the top. Oh, looks like I have tension issues on the bottom. So let me tighten that up a bit. Okay, let's try this one. So, yep, that row looks great. Looks great. Oh, I'm so happy. Okay, I'm gonna... She sounds great. She seems to be going really strong. I lift this up, releases tension, and pulls right out. Bobbin. Front. It's great. I love it. I think that this is going to be a sweet little machine. I think I might give her one quick little clean up and polish to get all of my little fingers off, and then we're going to give her glamour shot. Thank you so much for your patience with this project. I know it's taken a long time. Sometimes life just interrupts you, but she is all done now, and I think that she's fabulous. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
I found an antique sewing machine, forgotten and alone. I touched her rusty wheels and knew I'd take her home. I brought her to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years and let her sew again.